The sun scorched the dusty plains of Crescent Gulch, a town where deals were made with spit and grit, and people were bought as easily as cattle. The wind carried a restless heat as Eliza sat on the wooden steps of the saloon, her dress frayed and her hands folded tightly in her lap. She could see the mouths of the men moving, but their voices were only faint vibrations. She had been deaf since a fever took her hearing at age 7. Now 19, she understood the cruelty of the world more through its silence than its sound. When her stepfather led her through town tethered to a rope like a mule, she didn't need to hear the jeers. She could see them in the smirks, the shaking heads, the way women turned away. Behind the saloon, a tired old donkey brayed, and that's when her fate changed. "I'll trade you," a tall cowboy said, stepping out from the shade with dust on his coat and a glint in his dark eyes. "The girl for the donkey." The stepfather laughed. "She's not worth the ass she rides on. You got yourself a deal." Eliza blinked. She was pulled forward by the rope as her stepfather handed it to the stranger. Her heart thudded. She didn't know his name, couldn't ask. But he looked at her like a person, not property. He crouched in front of her and pointed to himself. "James!" He mouthed slowly. Then he pointed to her. "Eliza!" She mouthed back. He nodded, gently untied the rope, and draped his coat over her shoulders. Chapter 2. The Man Who Owned Crescent Gulch. James Callahan was more than a cowboy. He'd come into Crescent Gulch 5 years earlier with nothing but a bullet wound in a stool bag. Now, he owned half the saloons, all the land west of the tracks, and every ounce of water within 10 miles. Folks whispered he once rode with outlaws and shot a man dead for spitting on a dog. But no one knew why a man of his means would trade anything for a girl who couldn't hear. He didn't take Eliza to a brothel. He didn't hand her off to his men. Instead, he brought her to the grand house at the edge of town, the one with white columns and a wraparound porch. "You'll stay here," he mouthed to her, slowly pointing to her, then the house. "Safe." She watched him carefully. Was he good? Was he just waiting to use her differently? The housekeeper, Miss Hattie, took Eliza by the hand and showed her to a room upstairs. A room with a bed, a tub, and curtains that weren't patched with rags. Eliza sat on the bed and cried, not because she was afraid, but because, for the first time in years, no one expected anything from her except to just be. Chapter 3. Learning the Quiet Language. James tried to learn how to speak with her. Every night after supper, he'd sit with Eliza by the fire and use his hands, pointing, gesturing, sometimes drawing shapes in the air. At first, they barely communicated, but over the weeks, their signs became their own language. Eliza would smile when he tapped his heart and then pointed to her, and he'd grin like a fool when she used her fingers to sign thank you after he gave her fresh flowers from the garden. James saw her for what others never did, a survivor, a girl who had learned to read danger on faces, to sense lies in posture, to find joy in little things, like the softness of a horse's meneo, the way soap felt between her fingers. Eliza, in turn, began to see the man behind the legend. James wasn't just rich. He was lonely. His money kept him powerful, but it didn't keep him warm. He slept in a room as big as a barn and flinched whenever someone raised their voice. He had ghosts. One night, she found a locket on his desk. Inside was a photo of a woman and a baby, both gone now. She didn't ask. She just placed the locket gently back and left a flower on the desk. He never mentioned it. But the next day, he brought her a book of sign language. Chapter 4. Danger Rides In. Crescent Gulch was never safe for long. News spread that Clayton Hart, a vicious outlaw with a scar down his cheek, was riding back into town. He had history with James, and not the good kind. Word was James had left Clayton bleeding in the desert after a robbery gone wrong. Now Clayton was back for blood. "Take her out of town," Miss Hattie warned James. "That girl don't need to be caught in this mess." But James shook his head. "I won't run," he said, and for Eliza, He signed, "You're not going anywhere. Not unless you want to." She stayed. The night Clayton arrived, thunder cracked the sky like gunfire. Rain soaked the dust into mud, and saloon lights flickered through the downpour. James stood on the porch, a rifle in hand. Eliza touched his arm. Her eyes pleaded, "Don't do this." He reached for her hand and pressed it to his heart. Then he stepped into the rain. Chapter 5, Gunfire and Redemption. Clayton rode in with 5 men, all rifles drawn. "Come on out, Callahan," he bellowed. "Let's finish what we started." James stepped into the center of town, soaked but steady. "It ends tonight, hot." What followed was chaos. Gunshots, screams, shattered windows. James fired first, hitting one of the riders. The rest scattered like crows, but Clayton stayed, pistol drawn. They circled one another in the mud. One wrong twitch would end it. From the shadows, Eliza watched. She couldn't scream, couldn't cry out, but she could act. While the 2 men faced off, she crept behind Clayton with a rock in hand. He turned just as she swung. The rock cracked against his temple. He staggered. James fired. Clayton fell dead. James dropped to his knees, gasping. Eliza ran to him, muddy and shaking, wrapping her arms around him tight. He buried his face in her neck. "You saved me," he signed with trembling fingers. She pressed her forehead to his. "No, you saved me first." Chapter 6, The Girl Who Wasn't Property. Days passed. Clayton's gang was run out of Crescent Gulch, and the town hailed James as a hero again. But he didn't care about the talk. He cared about her. One morning, as the sun rose behind the hills, James found Eliza in the garden, planting flowers. He knelt beside her and tapped her hand. She looked at him. He signed, "You're not mine, but I'm yours if you'll have me." Tears welled in her eyes. Then she signed back for the first time. Yes. Epilogue. More than silence. Eliza never regained her hearing, but she found a voice. With James, she built a life of meaning. She started a small school for children like her, teaching them sign language, helping them find strength in what made them different. James, once feared and infamous, became the town's quiet guardian. He gave up half his saloons to build homes, clinics, and safe houses. People whispered about how the woman who couldn't hear tamed the man who couldn't love. They married in the garden where she planted her first flower. And on the stone arch above their door, James had carved 3 simple words and sign. "I see you.